Welcome back to the Atlas Hour. Today we have a very special guest. I know I say that for every guest, but today is my specialist guest. It is the woman who made me a man. It's my partner in life, my partner in business, co-founder and owner of Atlas Optimization, and the head dietitian of Atlas Optimization. Today we welcome Victoria Whittington. Hey.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. It's exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Kind of nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Yeah, first podcast.
Yeah.
We got Benji down here too. He is making his presence known. You guys can't see him on the camera, but he's here with us. So yeah, I wanted to bring you on because obviously you're an integral part of my life, and kind of wanted to let the listeners know a little bit about you. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, I'm a dietitian, and I help people with their nutrition. I help them learn to eat sustainably, and find a way that that works for their lifestyle.
So to eat without having to
restrict, be super crazy or neurotic about nutrition.
How'd you get into this?
Well, I started out as a personal trainer, and I had a lot of clients that were asking me about nutrition. What should I eat? Can you write me a meal plan? And I didn't really feel qualified to provide that kind of information. So I went back to school, got my bachelor's degree in food and nutrition from the University of Alabama, completed a dietetic internship, and then became a registered dietitian, passed the exam.
Awesome. So have you always been into like sports and fitness, things like that?
No. So that was probably about 22 when I got involved in fitness and nutrition. My entire high school career, never played sports, never was into fitness or anything like that. I was a choir girl, so just totally outside of my realm.
So you didn't play any sports at all?
None.
Work out at all?
No.
Did you ever battle with any weight issues, either overweight, underweight?
Yeah, so my freshman year in high school, I gained a little bit of weight. I was going through puberty, so now in hindsight, totally normal thing to go through, right? I think we're all a little bit awkward and weird looking during our teenage years. But I had gained a little bit of weight. I was a little more, I guess, for lack of a better word, chubby than I was prior to that. And by my junior year of high school, I had developed an eating disorder, which started out as anorexia and then over time turned into bulimia. So I have struggled with eating disorders in the past. And then in my early 20s, when I got into fitness, that kind of turned into orthorexia. So I became very obsessed with clean eating, logging my food, wouldn't put anything into my mouth without putting it in MyFitnessPal. Couldn't miss a workout, working out twice a day, 5-6 times a week. So just became very obsessed with clean eating, fitness, health. So that wasn't good either.
So for those listening, we'll do another episode all about eating disorders at some point, but can you differentiate a little bit between the anorexia you said and the bulimia?
Yeah, so the anorexia is, the key component of anorexia is a fear of weight gain. So the disordered eating behaviors are motivated by that fear of weight gain. And anorexia is basically not eating or eating very minimally to prevent that weight gain. Bulimia involves binge eating and then purging in some fashion, usually self-induced vomiting, can be purging via exercise, laxatives, can be purging via restriction, but it's rare. So those are the distinctions between the two.
So there needs to be a purging component with bulimia. If somebody just pigs out on a cheat day, that's not technically considered bulimia.
Correct, yeah. So that would be binge eating, right? But then you have anorexia purging type, which is where things get a little bit convoluted. But really the key component there is there's weight loss and fear of weight gain with anorexia, whereas bulimia, usually there's weight maintenance or weight gain.
Interesting.
So you can have someone who has anorexia who is not eating very much and losing weight, but then they might eat a protein bar, like I would do, eat a protein bar and then throw it up. So there's no binging element there, but you have the purging.
Understood. So you developed your first eating disorder in high school. Was there anything that led up to that? Anything that caused that behavior?
It's really hard to say what causes eating disorder behaviors. I mean, looking back, I can kind of see one thing that might have been the catalyst to it, or at least kind of created the insecurity in my mind, which led to the eating disorder. I had a female friend, let me not get things confused, a female friend in middle school. And by freshman year, all of a sudden, she just stopped talking to me, didn't want to be my friend anymore for whatever reason. You know, that's how things go when you're an adolescent. And every time she passed me in the hallway, she would make comments about my weight or me being disgusting or things like that. So that really kind of, first of all, I didn't understand why she didn't want to be my friend anymore. And then also she was making me feel very insecure about my appearance. So I think over time that led to the eating disorder behaviors, but obviously there's a lot more going on there. There's a genetic component. Some of us are predisposed to eating disorders in some way or another, or predisposed to mental illness. That's what an eating disorder is. So I think there was also a lot of other components going on there, but that was just kind of the trigger.
Was there any evidence of any of that type of behavior as a child? Like, were you hyper concerned with your appearance or anything before that point?
No.
Interesting. I ask because I have battled with eating disorders, as you obviously know, and the listeners do. And I felt like ever since childhood, I was always very concerned with how I looked, and I didn't have parents that were that way at all. I don't think either of my parents really cared about their aesthetics to any point. My dad's very hippie, and my mom was very athletic, and I don't think she cared or put a big importance on it. But I remember caring about my hair, for example, in fifth grade. I had a little comb, or not fifth grade, when I was 5, kindergarten. I had a little comb I would carry around, a little pocket comb, and I would do my hair and part it back because I wanted to look like Macaulay Culkin. And I just felt like I was hyper aware of my appearance ever since childhood without anybody teaching me that, really. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why. I don't know if it was something imparted on me through societal, impact or what, but is that something that you found in your patients? Does it start early? Is there anything that you could see in a young child that may lead to that?
I'm sure there's behaviors that you can see in a young child that might indicate later on in life a struggle, but I think that's a little bit outside of my realm. I think that's more the psychology and behavior related to the mental aspect of things. I know more about what's going on psychologically when the eating disorder is already happening. So I don't know really. I'm sure there is, but I couldn't really speak to that. But opposite of you, I have a very poor memory of my childhood. I know I always tell you that, but I was the opposite of that. I always just wore whatever I wanted to, didn't really care if it was cool. I remember specifically these rainbow stretchy bracelets from Hot Topic, and all of my friends in 6th grade thought they were weird, and I liked them, so I wore them. So I don't really feel like when I was younger, prior to being in high school, I didn't really focus on fitting in or focus on my appearance that much. But now that you mention it, you were talking about how your parents were not physically focused or they're focused on their appearance. Probably when I was about 6th, 7th, or 8th grade, my mom started taking phentermine or some type of stimulant medication to lose weight. So there was that, which I'm sure played some type of role. I just feel like there's so many different factors that kind of play into the development of an eating disorder.
Makes sense. And then you said you developed something called orthorexia. Can you just clarify what that is too?
Yeah, so it's an unhealthy obsession with healthy eating, health, fitness, to the point where it just takes over your entire life. Your entire brain space is dedicated to, what am I going to eat next? Is this good for me? Is this bad? You kind of know the nutrition component of everything you eat. It's just literally your entire brain space is dedicated to health, nutrition, and fitness.
And how were you able to get past that?
It took some time. I think, honestly, me moving away from that kind of started when I met you. You were doing if it fits your macros, and so you would eat anything. You weren't concerned with healthy or clean eating necessarily. You were just eating to fit your macros. So I remember starting to eat peanut butter chocolate Cheerios and logging that and thinking oh wow, I'm eating something sweet and sugary. And so I think when I met you, it kind of triggered that, but then it was still a couple of years before I transitioned out of that.
And what would you say your diet habits are now?
I don't really have any diet habits anymore, which is like really surprising to say, but incredibly freeing. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not just like eat whatever I want whenever I want. I'm still conscious of food and like what it's doing for the body, right? So I would say probably just at a very basic level, limiting saturated fat, trying to eat fruits and vegetables, making sure I get enough lean protein, but then still going out with you and having coffee or breakfast or lunches or whatever. So I do eat whatever I want, but I also prioritize getting nutrient-dense food.
I think when we say that too, there might be some misconception that we're feeling free to go out to McDonald's or have pizzas and things whenever we want. But at this point, I think I can speak for the both of us. Neither of us even like that stuff or want that stuff. And so we do get to eat what we want, but there's still always a component of how is this like fueling my body and how does this help my body and work towards my goals. Like for example, if we go out, we're going to order the chicken breast plate likely over like, a fried chicken plate or something because one, we just don't really like that stuff because of years of eating in a more health focused way. And then two, there is like an underlying, the fried chicken sandwich sounds good, but it doesn't really sound that good for what I know that it could negatively impact me. The ROI isn't really there. Sometimes it is. So sometimes if you feel like you want a pizza and you know that there's probably very little nutritional benefit there, it's probably not going to help your goals in any way, you'll say, screw it, and I'm going to have it right now. But I would say we probably eat 80 to 90% of the time with goals in mind. Would you agree, even when we're eating out? And the foods that we like just so happen to fall within that, luckily.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like at this point, I don't even really think, does this align with my goals?
Yeah.
And I feel like it's just because it's so habitual now, like these are my habits. And so, like you said, our tastes for the foods that we want to eat are not fried chicken or McDonald's. No, I like pizza. Pizza is one of my favorite foods. But I also like a very Neapolitan pizza, like a thin crust Italian pizza. I don't like Pizza Hut or, whatever those Chicago-style pizzas are. So to go back to what you were saying, I think it's just that my tastes are not for those foods. And now, at this point, I don't even really think, is this going to support my goals? I'm not even thinking about what my goals are. I think at this point, it's just a habit. I just practice behaviors that are going to support my health. And I think also, too, is like I will not eat certain foods because I know how crappily I'm going to feel afterwards. I don't like feeling like crap.
Yeah. Could you argue then that what you consider disorder eating, the orthorexia, almost allowed you to then develop this lifestyle where you can eat and have a healthier mindset about it, but that has now become your norm and your habitual, like you stated. So a lot of people, like that's my pushback with the, what's the community that's like health at every size, but the intuitive eating. Yeah, I mean, if you just tell your random person who doesn't have any idea about nutrition in any sort to intuitively eat, and they think without nuance, they think just eat whatever my body tells me to. Well, most people are programmed to eat highly processed foods, very satiating, high saturated fat, high refined sugar content, and they're just going to say, I'm intuitively eating what my body told me to do, which was McDonald's, where we now can literally intuitively eat because we develop these new habits. Do you agree or do you have pushback on that?
I have a little bit of pushback on that because I feel like intuitive eating, to people who don't really know what that is, to people who haven't informed themselves and educated themselves on what intuitive eating actually is, it's not just go get a cheeseburger when you want one. Like there's a lot of other things there's 10 principles that go into intuitive eating. And one of them is gentle nutrition, which is paying attention to making sure that you're eating foods that are going to support your health and also paying attention to how different foods make you feel. So like I was saying, I don't like to eat things that make me feel like crap. So it's a lot more than just eat what you intuitively want to eat. There's more going into it than that.
I would say these people don't even know how good feels, though. If they're coming...
And that's part of it.
And they don't know anything about nutrition. So they don't know what a fat, a carbohydrate, or a protein is. They don't understand saturated fat, refined sugar. They don't know what these things are. They never have felt good, so they don't know what good is. And I mean, I deal with these people all the time. And so it's hard to say don't eat a food that doesn't make you feel good, because I'm sure they say I eat Taco Bell and feel just fine, because they're doing it every single day and that's their baseline.
Well, I would argue that they're not feeling fine. They just, like you said, don't know what feeling good is.
Exactly.
But I think, that's why it's important to work with a registered dietitian. If you want to learn how to eat intuitively, or you want to learn how to eat better, you have to reconnect with your body. So like a lot of these people don't even know what hunger and fullness feels like. They're eating when they're not hungry. They're eating because they're bored. They're emotional. It's time to eat. It's lunchtime. So reconnecting like with when your body's telling you it actually needs food, and also reconnecting with, when do I feel full? Is this meal still satisfying? Am I eating just to eat? Am I part of the clean plate club? Like I'm just cleaning my plate. So it's reconnecting with a lot of that stuff too. And also like building that base nutrition knowledge. What's a carb? What's a fat? What's saturated fat? All of that stuff too. So there's a lot that goes into it, and it's not something that just happens overnight or within a week. It takes months. These people, and myself included, took years to develop unhealthy eating habits, whether that's disordered eating habits or just not eating a lot of foods that are nutrient dense. So it took years to develop these habits and attitudes towards food. It takes time to change them.
Yeah, that's my thought. Was kind of like, I wouldn't have gotten to where I was had I not kind of been extreme in the beginning and learned all the nutrition and really, tracked. I tracked for 5 years straight. You remember, I tracked every single day for 5 years, and I haven't since. It's been like 2 years.
Yeah.
But because of that, I learned so much about food. Like I can still name off the exact grams in a serving of like pasta or something, and how many carbohydrates that's going to have, because I learned that. And now I can truly intuitively eat for the most part and know kind of roughly what I'm eating and when. And I think I developed that through those years of being a little bit more extreme. And I've kind of done that with everything in my life, but I'm kind of an extreme person, as you know. And like when I set off to go through school and be successful and stuff, I would like walled off every other part of my life, and I went full blown into that. I felt like I needed that. Maybe that was because of who I am, but have you found that to be beneficial with other people too? Like track at least in the beginning, or be a little bit more structured in the beginning so that you learn and then you can pivot away from that?
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely think that tracking can be a useful tool for people who have no nutrition knowledge at all and really need to become more aware of what they're eating and how it's affecting them. So I do think that it can be a useful tool. I don't think it's a long-term solution. If I have clients track, which I do at times, I'm very mindful of the possible negative effects of that. So I'm always checking in with them too. Like, how do you feel? Is tracking becoming too cumbersome? Are you finding it helpful? Are you thinking about food all the time? Like just kind of checking in on the mental aspect of things, just because I know how quickly it can go south. But I do think it can be a useful tool. It can definitely build awareness and help you kind of solidify those habits.
When you say go south, what are some things that would indicate that this is getting out of control, or what kind of negative things can come from tracking?
Well, I would say orthorexia, disordered eating. It doesn't even necessarily have to be like a specific DSM-5 eating disorder diagnosis. It can just be disordered eating. So I think when you become obsessed with nutrition and fitness, it's just not healthy for most people. I'm not talking about bodybuilders and people who are, doing nutrition and fitness and have to be meticulous about it for their career. I'm talking about just the average person. It's not good to have your entire mental real estate dedicated to what is my next meal and what is, when am I going to eat next? What's that going to be? When it's interfering with your life, it's not good.
Makes sense. And I think that's a good differentiation, that this isn't for the athlete or the person who has specific goals in mind, because I think there's an inherent disorder in there, but that's what it is. You know, just like being a business person, there's an inherent disorder in not spending time with your family, you know, and working on the weekends and things. But that is that season in life that they have to get through. And same goes for the bodybuilder. They are disordered, and they would agree. You know, what they do every single day is consumed by what their next meal is and how many macros are in it, et cetera. And so as a normal individual, if you don't want to have that, it's probably important to build some balance so that you can live a normal life. And then it's hard because so many people think that they want that life, but do they really? But maybe it's just a season. Maybe they have to get through it like I did. And I do think I came out the other side okay. So I don't know. That's kind of my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, I mean, I came out the other side okay too, but it was years of mental and physical suffering, you know? Yeah. And to what end? I think the more obsessed I was with what I was eating and whether or not I was working out, the worse I looked, honestly. I mean, when I transitioned from, you know, the clean eating to the if it fits your macros, well, then I was like trying to stay within a certain calorie and macronutrient goal. And if I went over that, then fuck it, I'll just eat everything and then I'll throw up. And so then it became that. And that's not good for your body in any way. And it's definitely not good for your mental health. So I've said it before. I think now I focus so little on what I'm eating and what's my workout going to be. And I feel like I look the best I've ever looked in my life. And it's just kind of, it's weird because, you know, the idea is that, oh, I want to be leaner and I want to build muscle, so I must diet and count. And yes, I would say that probably I am where I am because I did all of that, right? I didn't just miraculously end up lean with abs and muscles and stuff, right? Yeah. I put in the work, I did the stuff. And like you said, it was a season in my life. Looking back on it, it's not great in hindsight, but...
Yeah, I think about that all the time too, because now I'm so... I put so much so little mental bandwidth into what I eat. Most days, you know, I don't even eat all day and I don't even think about it. I couldn't have done that in the past, not without tracking and knowing exactly how much food would be in my dinner. And I don't know now, and I don't really care. But I have this foundation that I built from those years of being hyper, you know, obsessive over that. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of unfair for me to tell others that they shouldn't be that way if they want to look like me because I do it with such little effort, because no, that's not true.
Right. And I'm definitely not saying that,
yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's just perspective changes when you can look back. And would there have been a better way? Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
But you have worked with a lot of clients who've come to you with basically no knowledge, no foundation. And I think you've been able to successfully get them a physique and a body and a health status that they're comfortable with and happy with without going to extremes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, I would say that tracking was a part of that, a tool that was used in the beginning. But the goal for me is always to transition people away from that. Like I said, it's a learning tool. It helps build awareness around what your habits are and how you can change them, but it's not a long-term solution.
Interesting. So to pivot a little bit away from the specifics, I want to go back to your education. So you talked a little bit about what it took to become a dietitian. So it was 4 years of undergrad getting a bachelor degree in a nutrition-focused degree, or could it be any degree?
A nutrition-focused degree. So you have to complete a specific didactic program in dietetics.
Okay. Yeah. And then you do an internship for how long?
So length varies. It's 1,000 or 1,200 hours. 1,200 hours of supervised practice. I did mine in 6 months. It was an accelerated internship. Just ready to go. But some of them are 18 months. So. And
then you're certified or what is the licensure?
Board registered. So you take an exam, and then the Commission on Dietetic Registration, they're the ones that create the exam, and then you're registered dietitian. So
looking at least 5 years, potentially 6 for some people. And now there's a master's component too, right? Is that
in
required?
2024, you will now have to have a master's degree
To call yourself a dietitian. Mm-hmm. So a master's degree and an internship and that test.
Correct.
And how does that differ from, say, a nutritionist?
A nutritionist, anyone can call themselves a nutritionist. You can take a 6-week or a 6-month certification program and call yourself a nutritionist, or you can do nothing and call yourself a nutritionist. There's nothing governing or, saying what's required to call yourself that.
Okay. Yeah, I want to make that differentiation because we see that a lot. Somebody will say that they're a nutritionist, and I think that there's a lot of confusion there between a nutritionist and a dietitian. Mm-hmm. So a dietitian actually has formal education and has oversight via their field, right, and their peers.
Right, and continuing education requirements. So we have to continue to complete a certain number of educational units every 5 years. So, yeah, there's that. And that's not to say that, there's no good nutritionists out there, but it's good to differentiate the, what's required, because anybody can call themselves a nutritionist. But I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who actually know what they're talking about and have educated themselves properly, but you just don't know.
So that's what it takes to become a dietitian, and we talked a little bit about what you do. I want to kind of dive into what kind of clients that you like to work with or that you do work with, not necessarily always like, because I'm sure you have some that you prefer to work with and not. But do you work with mainly eating disorders like you had brought up earlier, or do you work with more of the orthorexia stuff or weight loss or bodybuilders? Like what's your kind of specialty?
My specialty is eating disorders. Okay. I'm eating disorder specialized, but I do work with a lot of different clients. So I work with people who want to change their body composition, people who have specific like bodybuilding goals, athletes, runners, people who are struggling with disordered eating. I currently have a client who is actively bulimic, and so that's a challenge. So I work with a bunch of different types of clients, from all ages and walks of life, men, women. So, yeah.
Is it hard to work with say, an eating disorder where you're telling them to not focus on any of these things, and then at the same time concurrently working with a bodybuilder where you're telling them that they're going to need to hit X macro and eat at this time and everything?
It is a little bit difficult sometimes. Yeah, it's, what is that, cognitive dissonance? Sometimes there's a little bit of that going on. Like before we moved here to Texas, I was working in an eating disorder clinic. That was my full-time job, working with adolescents who have eating disorders. And in that setting, we have to be very extreme with, all foods fit. There's no good and bad foods, no dieting, no weight loss. It's not okay to want to lose weight. And that was like what I would preach for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And then on the side, I would have my clients who wanted to change their body composition and wanted to lose weight, and I would be helping them do that. So it could be a little bit, difficult with that, but I think working in the eating disorder side of things helped with my approach for people who want to lose weight, because it just helps me to make sure that they're doing things in a sustainable way. We don't have to be extreme. We can make small changes that they're going to be able to continue to maintain over time. So, and it just helps me be aware of like the mental aspect of things too.
You said you specialize in eating disorders, but do you have a favorite client? Like if you only had to work with one phenotype moving forward, is there anybody that you really enjoy that you get a lot of fulfillment out of working with?
Well, I think all of my clients are fulfilling. I think helping anyone is fulfilling. I really like working with eating disorders, but it's emotionally draining. It's very difficult. So ideal client or favorite client, I guess I really like people who want to gain muscle. So I guess like athletes. And I love a weight gain goal because it's not hard to gain weight. Well, it can be. It can be. But I mean, I love a weight gain goal.
I struggle every day. You probably hear me talking to these guys who say, I can't gain weight. And I just think the first thing that I hear and that I know to be true is that you're simply not eating enough. So yeah, that's a big one. We hear it all the time. And that was me for years. Like I wouldn't gain the moment that I actually would force myself into eating a lot more, I would gain weight. And it takes a lot. And I think I honestly feel like losing weight is much easier than gaining weight. And I think anybody who has actually gained weight to the point of like an impressive muscular physique will agree the gain is a lot harder than the loss.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't even know if you've ever had to really do that. You know, you never had to be in like a bulk.
Not intentionally.
Yeah. It's highly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's not a fun place to be when you're eating like 5,000 calories. Everyone thinks that it's going to be a lot of fun. And it sounds fun on the surface. And it is fun for the first 2 weeks. And then, like, you remember the last one that I was doing, I love macaroni and cheese. And so I'd have to eat like macaroni and cheese just to be able to palate something. Now I didn't like it anymore in any way. And we were getting Mexican food all the time because it's another one of my favorites. And I was losing desire for it. Mm-hmm. Just not fun. And there's bodybuilders who do this every single day, and they don't substitute with mac and cheese. That was a little bit more on my end of just being like, I can't do this anymore. Like they're straight eating chicken or beef and rice and broccoli or something, avocado oil for every single meal for years on end. And that is a lot harder, I think, than just getting a little bit of a caloric deficit.
Yeah. I mean, I think people who struggle with losing weight or, continuing to gain weight would argue against that. But I think also gaining muscle with minimal fat gain is a completely different thing than just gaining weight.
So you mentioned at the previous job you had to be very extreme. What do you think of the liberal trend in nutrition, the push towards wokeness? Like, why is that there, and how do you feel about it?
Are you talking about health at every size?
That's one of many. Yeah, I mean, I just think that even medicine as a whole is becoming a lot more focused that way. You know, like even in medical schools, our friend Garrett was telling me, you know, all of the things that he had to do, like talking about their pronouns in school and all the various things that I didn't really have to deal with, but now is just becoming so evident in medicine and big time in nutrition because of like the health at every size. And, you know, the fact that a doctor can't even tell a patient that they're overweight and should lose weight. You know, like, what is your thought on that? Being a very fit person and then also having to have their toe dip into that world too. Is it hard?
Well, I think health at every size, and again, like I'm educated on this and had to practice, you know, from a Hazellined point of view. I think health at every size really looks at the fact that a lot of people who lose weight or large amounts of weight often almost always gain it back. So I think they really amass any research that shows dieting is causing more harm than good. So I think that's where they're coming from. I don't really know how to answer your question. You're asking me, what do I think about it?
How does it feel to be a part of that when, like, if somebody were to look at you, they would say this is a very fit person who cares a lot about their physique and works out a lot. Yet on the other side of, like, you know, in the medical space and nutrition space, it's not even okay to really concern yourself with the way that you look. You might even be demonized to look the way that you do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think about that. It doesn't feel good. I don't know. I honestly don't know how to answer your question. I see their point and their side of things. I don't think that it's like, it's not condoning like be overweight or obese. It's not supporting that or encouraging it. Now, I think that there are aspects of society that are doing that, right? They're glorifying being in a larger body. But I don't think that's what health at every size is actually aiming to do. I think health at every size is encouraging, obviously, body acceptance and like more of like the intuitive eating thing. And I think just with anything, you have the extremes. So you have, you know, the extremely liberal part of society that are going to take that way on one end of things. And I don't think that was what it was actually meant to be.
Yeah, makes sense. I think with everything, there's always a lot of nuance.
Yeah.
And the issue is that it's not fully disclosed. And the main thing is you hear is you can be healthy at every size. And that just seems completely absurd. You know, I think that that verbiage is highly inaccurate. You cannot be healthy at every size. I think that's well documented in the literature that obesity in and of itself is an inflammatory condition. Obesity is that is a disease, because of the negative ramifications. So I understand being beautiful at every size, accepting every size, finding your own health at every size. And like we had just watched that reel of that lady who ran a marathon and she's classified as obese. So yes, she's probably in her own way healthy. Could she be healthier? Sure, because I could be healthier. So I think that it kind of is portrayed as like you can hit optimal health at any size, which I don't think is true, because I don't think anybody can be, perfectly healthy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it's looking at, okay, so you said that research shows that obesity is not healthy. I think health at every size looks at the behaviors, what led to the obesity. So it's obviously the overconsumption of food, inactivity, probably not sleeping enough, poor stress management. So all of these things that can be changed or modified led to the obesity. So health at every size, rather than saying the obesity is the problem, let's lose weight, it's saying, oh, you're not really being very active. You're sitting at a desk all day. Could we get up and move around a little bit more? Could we maybe add in a 30-minute walk every day? Oh, you're eating McDonald's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Maybe we could do a meal at home. So it's like more focusing on what behaviors can we change rather than saying obesity is the problem, if that makes sense. I mean, obviously obesity is the problem, but the obesity didn't just occur.
But how can anyone tease that out of health at every size?
No one can, right? That's the problem. It's, like you said, there's a lot of nuance.
Yeah, that's an absurd title for, this is the thing that always bothers me with all the liberal movements, is at the end of the day, they're saying the exact same thing that everybody else is, but they've just given it a different term.
Yeah.
Like there's no dietitian or nutritionist that is, focused on health that would ever tell you that all we're going to focus on is that this person's fat, tell them they're fat and they need to not be fat. No, there's entire books dating back decades that say we need to fix the habits of an individual. We talked about the whole time, that you need to fix the habits. And that's essentially what you're saying, is that they're not going to tell them that obesity is a problem. They're going to work on fixing their habits and their lifestyle and the things that led to it. Well, sure, duh. So why did there need to be a whole new movement with this very confusing name on top of it that now makes people like myself, like doctors, feel like we can't even bring up weight? You tiptoe around it because you're going to offend somebody, and they think that they're perfectly fine eating more and intuitively eating their way to obesity because that can be healthy.
Yeah. Why is there any movement? I think a lot of the movements that we see now, like you said, are just saying things that we're already, like, that most of society is already thinking and doing. Now there's just some weird name slapped on it, and it's made such a bigger deal than it needs to be.
Yeah. To be fair, another movement very similar to that would be if it fits your macros, because if it fits your macros, the way that it sounds would lead you to believe that you can eat anything if it fits within your macros, which was never what the people who kind of started it meant it to be. The if it fit your macros term came, I believe, on the bodybuilding.com forums in the MISC section, which was a lot of joking. And I think they would just throw out there and say, like, if it fits your macros, you can fit it in. But the pioneers of it, like Alan Aragon and Lane Norton and people like that, they were never saying eat whatever you want. They were saying that if it can fit within your macros, it can be okay. So it was this non-restrictive type of eating, meaning that if all of your macros are met and you still have 20 carbohydrates left and you want to eat a few gummy worms, it's not going to hurt if that carbohydrate comes from gummy worms or if it comes from brown rice, which before there was a thought that you would get fat if it was from gummy worms, but you would be totally fine if it was from brown rice or sweet potato. But yeah, I think that term also, the term was confusing. There was more nuance there, and people would hear that and think, oh, I can eat whatever I want as long as it fits within my macros.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is that people hear what they want to hear. With anything. So I think if someone's I keep wanting to say in a larger body. That's what I've been trained to say. If someone's overweight or obese or in a larger body and they hear health at every size and it makes them feel better about their behavior, then that's what they're going to tie to it or get out of it.
Yeah. It does seem a little absurd though, that you can't even, if somebody wants to lose weight, we kind of talk them out of like, no, we can't say you want to lose weight. Like that just seems a little absurd, like they just change the wording of it to like, let's let you live inside a smaller body or something. Like, how do you even say, to be politically correct, that one wants to lose weight?
You can't say that you want to lose weight.
You just can't?
You're not allowed to want to lose weight.
That's so strange to me. Oh, well, yeah, I don't think I'll ever understand that, but it is what it is. Anyways, I think we should probably try to wrap up here soon. Is there anything else that you want to mention on any of that?
No.
You good?
Yeah.
All right. Well, if anybody wants to work with you, how could they do so?
So you can go to atlas-optimization.com. You can find us there. Or you can find me on Instagram, your dietitian Victoria. Just send me a DM and I'll talk to you about how we can work together.